Look, it's very simple. Any show that feels like the love child of Top Gun and Batman the Animated Series deserves to be eternal, especially when it was as bloody good as SWAT Kats. When it first debuted on TBS's Funtastic world of Hanna-Barbera back in 1993, kids of all ages went totally nuts. I mean, it was as goofy as shows like Scooby-Doo or the Jetsons, but featured these two renegade jet pilot cat heroes, complete with their secret identities and vigilantism, and how they battled mecha warriors in their gritty urban planet in Megakat City. And like even today, if you speak with any of your folks and friends about SWAT Kats, more often than not, they'll tell you how fresh and bold it was for Saturday morning TV. Brothers Christian and Yvon Tremblay, the creators of the show, admitted that it totally was inspired by the OG Batman cartoon, and it greatly influenced their style while working on SWAT Kats. But the gloomy part about SWAT Kats is how it ended, and more importantly, the unfair treatment it received towards the end. And in this video, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. That is, how did SWAT Kats, the Radical Squadron, end? So without further ado, let's begin, shall we?
To try out my madcap missile.
How SWAT Kats started as Hanna-Barbera's coolest action experiment. When SWAT Kats was launched for its first season, it built itself a very devoted fan base in record time, almost as if it had taken the cartoon sphere by storm. And the response was only natural, because the show had such quality, if not novelty. I mean, animals turned into humanoids, who then go on to fight supervillains, was a concept that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles popularized as well, and the rest was just people copying stuff. But still, SWAT Kats was unique in its own way, and it felt like one of Hanna-Barbera's boldest experiments in a very long time. Finally, they were willing to take on a serious risk, because this time around, the series wasn't connected to or based on any pre-existing material like comics or toy lines or anything. So, when the Tremblay brothers pitched their original series, they ran the risk of being shut down. But what they'd done was to ensure their new series was also built to ride the 90s action-adventure wave. The Turbocat fighter plane, for instance, or their secret lair at the junkyard, and even their names, Razor and T-Bone. All of these things seem to be something that would resonate with all action film and comic book fans. And God knows it, there's no lack of those two kinds of people on this Mother Earth. And as odd as it was, the network embraced it, and thankfully so, I have to add. TBS premiered SWAT Kats on September 11th, 1993. It wasn't quite the ominous day it would later become in 2001. Anyway, they slotted SWAT Kats into the futuristic world of Hanna-Barbera, and within just a few weeks, the series became a top-performing syndication hit in 1994. And from that, it seemed like SWAT Kats was here to stay, which the Tremblays believed as well. I mean, there was no reason to think that anything untoward would happen to this cartoon in a long time from then. And they immediately got to work and soon assembled a talented team, including longtime Hanna-Barbera director Robert Alvarez, who oversaw all episodes, and writers like Glenn Leopold and Lance Falk cranked out scripts. In fact, these two, Leopold and Falk, had some great ideas like changing alien designs or cutting subplots to certain episodes, but all that had to be trimmed down to please the studio. But after all these years, we can say that by the end of season 1, it was clear SWAT Kats had carved out its own legacy, and no matter what, fans were going to continue to love it along with the other classics of the era. What's it based on? Top Gun meets Batman in fur. Of course, fans were quick to notice the clear inspirations behind their latest favorite. They could feel the same Top Gun's jet pilots in training thing going on, plus a Batman animated series skyline of angular shadows and two brooding heroes who were less serious than Batman. Christian Tremblay once explained that a simple concept art of a cat in a cool flight suit caught executive attention, and that was mostly because this cat in question looked like a fighter pilot, and you could easily connect that idea with maybe a cat squadron of the United States Air Force. And because of all these reasons, the show intentionally went for a more mature tone than Hanna-Barbera's usual Saturday cartoons. This one had lasers and missiles, high-risk destruction, monsters like the Pastmaster and mutant villains, and even a swearing crocodile scientist in Dr. Viper. Although I have to agree, his face looked more like a cat's than a croc's. Anyway, the point is that this one was not a Flintstones-like, not at all. It was more the kind of cartoon that kids would think was awesome while parents might be secretly wary of it.
Of facts.
Hello, Enforcer Headquarters.
How did the cartoon actually end on screen? The most unfortunate thing about the cartoon was that it didn't really have a traditional ending, and the last episode wasn't a finale. It was just a regular episode that happened to be the last one that aired. The finale was the season 2 episode called Unlikely Alloys, which came out on Christmas Eve of 1994. Now this episode started with the SWAT Kats in the middle of a gyroscopic G-force drill, but Razor's device then fell apart, and the accident spread the parts of the machine all over the hangar. But the problem wasn't the broken machine, but the fact that their radar jammer was destroyed in the process. And without that, their main shields against enforcer detection was gone, which in turn meant that Commander Farrell could soon find the SWAT Kats and blow their cover. Before they could work out how to replace the jammer, news came that the Megakat had attacked the Megakat City Mint. Mac and Molly had cut their way into the vault, and when the enforcers arrived, the robot criminals didn't seem worried at all. They had new weapons, and Mac almost used one of them to kill Commander Farrell before T-boning Razor came to his timely rescue. The SWAT Kats stopped the Megakat for the time being and damaged Molly, but Mac escaped with his wife. Mac took Molly back to their apartment, and soon after that, he saw a news report about Dr. Leiter Greenbox and his new micro-brain repair unit. This device had the power to repair machines, and Mac immediately knew that he needed to get his metal hands on it if he wanted to fix Molly. No, wait, correction. He needed to put his hand on it because the other one had been destroyed in the previous scuffle at the Mint. Meanwhile, the SWAT Kats saw the same report and decided to take their broken jammer to Greenbox to get it fixed. Mac reached there first and used it to repair Molly. She was back in proper shape, but then the microbrain went out of control. It tore apart the Megakat Express and used the parts to build a robot body for itself. After that, it offered itself to Mac and Molly because it had absorbed enough of their personalities to think that their criminal experience made them suitable leaders. It's not great logic, but then again it came from a machine that had chosen the Megakats as its mentors. The robot then began to tear apart Greenbox's lab to add more pieces to itself. The machine soon called itself Zed, and when the SWAT Kats arrived at Greenbox's lab, it set its sights on the Turbocat. Zed failed to absorb the jet, but when a fleet of Enforcer Peacemaker tanks arrived, it started to take them apart and add their parts to its growing body. Mac and Molly wanted Zed to help with another raid, but Zed had become obsessed with finding its true purpose. When Mac tried to force it to obey, Zed took him apart and absorbed him too. The SWAT Kats tried to fight Zed, but their weapons did almost nothing, and even the Turbocat barely escaped. Molly then came to the SWAT Kats and demanded their help. Greenbox gave the group the protective equipment they needed, and their new mission was to enter Zed and shut it down from within. Meanwhile, Zed moved toward a Pumadine Industries site because he wanted the weapons stored there and planned to use them for world domination. The Enforcers tried to hold it back and also worked to evacuate Pumadine, but then they found out the Mega Beam satellite weapon was still inside the facility. Inside Zed, the SWAT Kats, Molly, and Greenbox faced robotic antibodies, and when their jetpack fuel ran out partway through the giant machine, they had to continue on foot. They eventually reached Zed's heart and found Mac wired into its systems. Molly wanted him freed, but Razor removed her protective force field generator, and Zed pulled her into its frame as well. Then Greenbox had a change of heart, of course for the worse. So basically, the more he saw of Zed, the more he admired it, and he refused to destroy his own creation. And as a result, he grabbed the microbrain unit and fled, which forced T-Bone and Razor to chase it. When they caught him, Greenbox and Zed had merged into one entity. The new form disarmed the SWAT Kats and went after the Mega Beam. After a test of the weapon, it aimed the satellite at Megakat City. At the final moment, T-Bone broke free and shattered the microbrain, which set off a chain reaction through Zed's body. The SWAT Kats escaped with an unconscious Greenbox before the giant machine fell apart. And for once, Farrell actually thanked them, which almost felt stranger than the robot monster. And although we didn't know that this was going to be the last episode, it seemed that Farrell had finally come to appreciate the SWAT Kats, thereby giving us some sense of closure. So yeah, this was just the last story episode that aired, but on January 6, 1995, the network ran the SWAT Kats A Special Report, also called Cat's Eye News A Special Report, which was basically a one-off news-style recap of highlights from past episodes. Now this one was a montage-heavy episode and basically served as a pseudo-goodbye after the unfortunate and super abrupt cancellation. But you know what? When the show was canceled, there were at least 3 more episodes that were in varying stages of production. But as fate would have it, they never saw the light of day. So the 3 unfinished stories were titled Succubus, Turmoil 2: The Revenge, and Doctors of Doom. And since they canceled the show itself, these were never really completed. But yeah, a few elements from Succubus were actually reused in unrelated works like Johnny Quest and Scooby-Doo films.
I was almost sorry to see the red links go down.
Why was SWAT Kats canceled? The Ted Turner controversy and the violence problem. The bottom line is that SWAT Kats was axed by higher-ups. Studios rarely cancel shows that are number one on the charts, and in late 1994, when it was canceled, that was the status that SWAT Kats actually enjoyed on Turner's syndicated lineup. And although some may tell you that the possible reasons were weak toy and merchandise sales or some other sort of ratings decline, the truth was that there was a shift in the corporate climate, and the immediate reason was that the stories were becoming slightly too violent. For instance, even in the final episode, Zed destroyed an entire mountain island, and the blast looked similar to a nuclear bomb's detonation. In fact, he almost destroyed Megakat City, which is basically genocide. In 1994 and 1995, Ted Turner, who owned TBS, was criticizing violence on TV left, right, and center. He famously said Turner Networks had non-violent cartoons like Flintstones, Jetsons, etc., and didn't want to encourage children to kill each other like some programs do. And when he mentioned these examples, he did not mention SWAT Kats as one of them, and people started to think that he meant that SWAT Kats was violent. Even if he did mean it, which he probably didn't, my point is that the kind of violence that SWAT Kats had was not easily imitatable. I mean, the cartoon deals with laser blast monsters and dinosaurs, but Turner still used these things as the poster child for his stance. People assumed Turner himself pulled the plug. Some even believe that Jane Fonda, his then wife, was the one really responsible for influencing his decision given her anti-violent activism. But then, according to some insiders, the truth could be more nuanced than this rather simplistic reason. You see, Turner's public statements on TV violence certainly set a climate of concern, sure, but then SWAT Kats wasn't alone in being so edgy, for lack of a better term. Turner didn't single-handedly kill SWAT Kats, but he was actively discouraging such shows which had even some degree of violence, especially violence that could remotely be imitated. Meanwhile, SWAT Kats had to face another strike in the form of merchandising factors. Back then, kids' cartoons lived and died on toy sales. As I mentioned earlier, when SWAT Kats was released, it had no strong toy line, partly because it came out at a time when cartoon makers were scrambling to respond to Turner's demands. Additionally, TBS wasn't prepared to support SWAT Kats' success with toys, and although it debuted to instant popularity, there were no toy shelves filled in time. Animators Lance Falk and others later said that Turner's objections were wrongly interpreted as SWAT Kats as too violent for kids, even if he never explicitly asked anyone to cancel the show. In any case, by the end of 1994, Turner's networks were culling several action-heavy kids programs. In interviews years later, the creators acknowledged Turner's comments, but they also, and very categorically I must add, downplayed the Jane Fonda myth, saying that the economy of the show was the bigger issue. But the long and the short of it is the kids were left hanging. Razor and T-Bone had just survived their toughest battles against giant robots, evil sorcerers, and mutated monsters. But real-world economics was something they couldn't beat. What happened after the cancellation? Although we know the result now, efforts were made to revive the show back in the day. It's all but clear that Turner's speech and his broader anti-violence campaign created a fraught environment, so to speak. One of the Tremblays, I think back in a 2012 interview, said that Warner Brothers had the broadcast rights and the Tremblays themselves had creative rights, and he basically implied that the Tremblays did ask, or at the very least tried to, continue the series even post-cancellation. But Warner Brothers chose not to greenlight it, and as a result of that, the status quo is that the Tremblays technically own the property and could attempt revivals, but they needed a Warner Brothers or Cartoon Network to co-produce any TV run. And this got more credence during the whole Kickstarter phase, where the Tremblays tried to gather money from fans to help revive the cartoon, and once again they partly succeeded as well. But you know what? Even with fan backing, Warner Brothers passed on a revival pitch, likely remembering Turner's stance. So I think the violence scare that Turner knowingly or unknowingly started made executives and studios steer clear of a show as beautiful as SWAT Kats. What happened to T-Bone, Razor, and the voice cast after the show? Of course, the show ended, but the cast certainly didn't entirely disappear, and because they did a good job on the show, they got more opportunities. Razor's voice actor, Barry Gordon, had already been a Hollywood kid actor and continued to build a voice legacy after SWAT Kats. In fact, Barry is perhaps best known to some fans as Donatello as well as Bebop in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoons. And he still voiced Donatello in later TMNT projects as well. On the other hand, Charlie Adler, who played T-Bone, well, he went on to become one of the busiest guys in animation. Charlie's resume is huge, much bigger than Barry's. Like, he starred as Buster Bunny on Tiny Toon Adventures and Ickis on Real Monsters, played Cow and Chicken, and not like one but both titular kids and their devilish nemesis. Then there was Darkwing Duck, Renegades, Cobra Commander, and so much more. In essence, after SWAT Kats, Charlie's career took off on Cartoon Network shows and Disney projects, and if you look closely, you won't find a corner of the 90s or 2000s cartoons where he didn't at least cameo. Tress MacNeille, the original Callie Briggs, is also a legend in voice acting circles and has dozens of credits. Right around the time that SWAT Kats aired, Tress landed big roles. She already had Tiny Toon Adventures where she played Babs Bunny and Animaniacs where she was the voice for Dot Warner. And she is Dot Warner. She also voiced Daisy Duck in Disney shorts, Gadget in Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and a laundry list of Simpsons characters, including but not limited to Agnes, Brandine, Crazy Cat Lady, Lindsay Nagel, etc. And as you can see by the mid-90s, she was one of animation's golden voices. Finally, Jim Cummings, who voiced Mayor Manx and a few other roles, is practically Disney royalty. He was already the official Winnie the Pooh voice since 1988, and also later took on Tigger. Jim also voiced Darkwing Duck in the 90s, Pete in various Disney shows, Fat Cat in Rescue Rangers, etc. So basically the SWAT Kat actors bounced right back into the voice acting stratosphere, and it's safe to say that none of them fell off as such. What came next after SWAT Kats ended? VHS, DVD, fan campaigns, and revival attempts. So if history's taught me anything about canceled shows, it's that even after TV stops airing them, a show can live on through home releases and fan campaigns. Likewise, it's safe to say that SWAT Kats had a modest presence on VHS. When I look at Turner and Hanna-Barbera archives, I found that in July of 1995, 3 video collections were released, namely Strike of Dark Cat, Deadly Dr. Viper, and Metallicat's Attack, and each of these had 2 episodes. These tapes also included the secret files of SWAT Kats that had aired on TBS between episodes, and these were basically mini educational clips all about the science that went behind the tech. But after this, nothing new was released for many years. Finally, in late 2010, the Warner Archive Collection released SWAT Kats: The Radical Squadron, the complete series on DVD. This was a big deal for anyone who grew up with SWAT Kats because it meant that all episodes and the special were officially available, and in good quality. The first 2010 processing had one major glitch though. Several episodes had the wrong end credits, so WB was forced to pull it back and fix all the wrong endings. But on January 19th, 2012, they re-released the corrected set. But yeah, both DVD editions sadly omitted the secret files bumpers. But over all those years, a dedicated fan base had grown online. Fans of the show who were kids in the early 90s had grown into adults and started creating art, fiction, and podcasts. In fact, they even managed to track down lost concept art. And it wasn't long before the creators started taking notice of these developments. So much so that in 2015, the Tremblays launched the SWAT Kats Revolution Kickstarter campaign. It raised $141,500 from 2014 backers and effectively exceeded its initial goals. They promised that $1 million would help them create 5 full-fledged episodes. Having said that, the primary goal of the Tremblays wasn't really to jump into new episodes as soon as they got a hold of the money. No, it was to fund development like promotional shorts, concept art books, and anime-style teasers, a way to show the networks that there was still love for the Cats. And as you may know, the networks were the guys with the real money. Like, there's only so much you can do with crowdfunded green pills, yeah? Christian Tremblay explained that even with the Kickstarter money, they ran into several roadblocks. For instance, no studio picked up the project. Not even Warner, Netflix, Amazon, they all declined. But why? I mean, Netflix is known to make shows on just about anything, be it gardening or monsters. So why is Netflix wary of SWAT Kats? You see, Hollywood had become super wary of the cat-based IPs after the 2019 movie Cats. It was made on a budget of $100 million and starred some of the greats like Judi Dench, Idris Elba, Rebel Wilson, James Corden, Taylor Swift, and even Ian McKellen. But yeah, the movie sucked and tanked really badly. Whatever the reason, SWAT Kats Revolution didn't happen. But then all was not bad, because there was a development that happened on January 20th of 2021 when the Tremblays announced that an official partnership with India's Toons Media Group to co-produce SWAT Kats Revolution into a full series. Toons said they would work with the Tremblays as creative leads. SWAT Kats Revolution is a brand new series Christian Tremblay told Animation Magazine, and added with the DNA of what made it successful will remain. So this essentially meant that all the classic relationships between characters in the show and all the action would remain intact. In fact, the press release promised a target audience of kids 5 to 11, with new villains and vehicles, and of course, the same witty tone. Toons CEO Jayakumar praised the comeback and said, "It's a privilege for Toons to revive this iconic show. Tremendous potential for the property." It was all very real, or so it seemed at the time. However, in the ensuing years, it's been proven beyond an ounce of doubt that progress on SWAT Kats' revolution has been glacial. In spring of 2025, several reports and even comments from the Tremblays on social media indicated that they were no longer collaborating with Toons and searching for a new partner. Meanwhile, the Tremblays shifted to other projects like music, art books, and most excitingly, the comic realm, which brings me to my next point. What's the current status? So in 2025, the franchise took off again. Not on TV or any digital format, but in print form. The Tremblays teamed up with a publisher to launch SWAT Kats #1, Megakat City Has Fallen, the first ever official SWAT Kats comic book. And it was further announced in July of 2025 that this oversized comic would be written by veterans like Frank Barbary and Kevin Rodatelli, with art by George Corona, and would, quote, pick up where the show left off, unquote. It went to Kickstarter in late 2025 and pretty much smashed records. Like, the campaign raised over $732,000 from 6,500 backers, making it the biggest single-issue comic crowdfunding ever. The creators themselves have now said, and I quote, "We're absolutely thrilled to be bringing new storytelling to the SWAT Kats universe." Editor Illage called the series Batman Meets Blacksad, and a motion comic adaptation has been promised too, so the jet engines will roar again. As of mid-2025, the original show remains a completed relic of the 90s, with 25 aired episodes, 1 special, and 3 unfinished plotlines, and a legacy of fandom. No new SWAT Kats cartoon has premiered yet, and the planned animation revival SWAT Kats Revolution, announced in 2021 with Toons, has no broadcast date, cast, or concrete new footage released. And it's safe to say that it's still in limbo. So in effect, the SWAT Kats saga is a lesson in almosts and enduring fandom. On one hand, the cartoon's official run ended abruptly, with Razor and T-Bone's adventures unresolved due to cancellation. On the other hand, the story hasn't truly ended. It's been kept alive by its creators and fans alike. Voice actors moved on to other successes, the series found life on home video, and revival projects have steadily emerged. First the Kickstarter development push, then the Toons reboot attempt, and now the comic book expansion. I've told this story from start to finish, that the original Hanna-Barbera gamble, the exact on-screen finale, the tangled reasons it got axed, and all the steps fans took afterwards. It's been more than 30 years, and yet every time I talk to fellow fans or find a forum thread, people still eagerly ask what happened to SWAT Kats. And now the answer's complete. Yeah, it ended in 1995 without a grand finale on TV. But its legacy continues through DVDs, fan love, and new comics. T-Bone and Razor might not have taken their final flight on the small screen, but their engines are sputtering back to life in other forms. So yeah, that's all for this one, guys. If you liked the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those clicks from you really help us tremendously in bringing more videos like this. And be sure to ring that bell icon so you don't miss any more future videos from us. Stay safe, and as always,